What did the IRA achieve during Northern Ireland's Troubles? That's the question posed by The Guardian's Ireland correspondent Henry MacDonald in a new book, Gunsmoke and Mirrors. He says that the people who died in vain.
It was futile because I think it didn't achieve its so-called war aims. It did not achieve a united Ireland. There's still a Union flag flying over Belfast City Hall the last time I looked. It ended with the same settlement that basically was on offer in 1974, i.e. power sharing within still the UK structure. So in that sense, it ended without the realisation of Republican goals, as it probably would have ended anyway, realistically speaking.
Didn't the IRA's campaign lend an urgency to finding a solution, though?
No, I don't think it did. I think it actually was more part of the problem than the solution. I think what it has done is it has divided the communities even further than they actually already were. It's, in a way, paradoxically, and I argue this in the book, enhanced partition, because in the Irish Republic, a modern European state, independent and sovereign, there is an attitude towards Northern Ireland that, well, we're glad it's settled, but it's up there somewhere. And in a sense, the violence alienated a lot of the population in the south towards all things Northern Ireland. I mean, even now, coverage of Northern Ireland is a big turn-off, for instance, on Irish broadcasting organisations, for example. So, no, I think it was more part of the problem rather than the solution.
The IRA always said that there was high-level collusion between the British Army and the various loyalist groups. Did you find any evidence to support this?
There was some collusion, undoubtedly, but I mean, the figures speak for themselves. I mean, the proportion of IRA members killed by loyalists is tiny in comparison to the other casualty figures, the other categories of casualties. In other words, if there was high-grade, structured, organised, militarily directed collusion, there would have been far more dead IRA personnel and dead INLA personnel killed by loyalists. I think it's exaggerated. There were instances, undoubtedly, unquestionably. And I think as well the collusion question, in my view, from what I've seen, is multifaceted. The scandals of the security forces is that they were running agents all over the place, both in Republican organisations and indeed in the loyalists. So, and that's evident from scandals such as the steak knife affair, where the head of the IRA spy catchers was himself a spy for the British and was involved in setting people up for death, even though he was a paid agent of the British state. So the collusion issue is much more complex than it's made out to be. And I think in terms of casualty figures, a cursory study of the different categories of people who were killed will tell you that collusion was not directly structured and highly organised as it was meant to be.
You draw attention in the book to the age of some of the IRA's so-called soldiers. To what extent were they manipulated by older Republicans?
Well, I think there was a section of the Republican movement in the 60s that didn't like the new departure. The departure very much that Sinn Féin are embarking on today, of compromise with the Unionists and going down the purely political path. Those old guard, if you like, saw an opportunity in 1969 when the Loyalists, and let's stress this, it was the Loyalists, attacked Catholic communities in response to the civil rights agitation. I think they saw these young street fighters emerging, defending their communities as a potential army, which they were. And I mean, there were in some instances, I came across cases of young guys, young as 15 and 14, who were being arrested, put before magistrates' courts and charged with serious terrorist offences. This was a youth rebellion as much as anything else. The troubles, and that was also the case on the Loyalist side too. I mean, there were people who were put in jail in the UVF and the IRA at the age of 16 for murder. So, you know, it was very much a young people's war, if you like.
You're very critical of the role of the left in mainland Britain during the period of the Troubles, particularly Ken Livingstone and Tony Benn. Why was that?
Well, I'm not critical of the left per se. I'm saying that there was a section of the British left that I wouldn't not so much Tony Benn and Ken Livingstone, but others much more extreme towards the real extremes, who sort of imagined that somehow that the disturbances in Northern Ireland would somehow precipitate some sort of British social crisis in across the water and across the Irish Sea. I think that was ultimately naive. I think where Tony Benn and Ken Livingstone got it wrong, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, is that to argue simply for troops out, I think that kind of fueled the fantasies of people at the top of the Republican movement, that somehow one big push would lead to the troops being pulled out. And I don't think they thought through the consequences of their argument, i.e. that if the troops were pulled out and there was the place left to itself, there wouldn't just be United Ireland, there'd be a sectarian civil war, which we we virtually had anyway. I mean, we were very, very lucky not to tip into sort of Lebanese-style sort of civil war politics, but, we came close.
There are many other people, of course, Henry, reflecting on the era of the Troubles. What do you make of the recent rendering of the story of Bobby Sands in Steve McQueen's film Hunger?
Funny you said, I've just seen that film. I thought it was an excellent movie. I really did. I thought it portrayed that period very, very well. There were a few historical quibbles with it, but in general, I thought it was quite fair. I think some of the criticism levelled at the director and the scriptwriters is unfair itself. It really is. There's another important drama about the Troubles. It's not a drama, book out at the minute by Anthony McIntyre, who is himself an ex-IRA prisoner. He did 16 years in the H blocks. It's called Good Friday, The Death of Republicanism, and he sort of argues similarly to myself that the project was defeated. Now, he has his own theory as to why that was the case, but and he's more critical of the current political process maybe than I would be. But it's interesting that his analysis is coming out at the same time as mine. There's also a book about the H-block struggle called Blanket Men by Richard O'Raw, very important book as well about the hunger strike. Some controversial things being said in that. There's a feel of people are finally turning, after 10 years of relative peace, relative stability, are beginning to look back and say, well, what was that all about? Maybe it had to take 10 years in order for us to get a political settlement before journalists, writers, historians, and artists start to sort of assess the past. And this is happening not just in Ireland or in Britain, it's happening even in Germany at the minute with, the current film about the Bannerman